Good morning. Thank you for joining me today. After a week reprieve, went out to California for a conference on ministry to Muslims. Good stuff. This morning, we will be in Zechariah chapter 4, verse 1 through chapter 5, verse 11. The angelic messenger who had been speaking with me then returned and woke me as a person is wakened from sleep. He asked me, "What do you see?" I replied, "I see a menorah of pure gold with a receptacle at the top and 7 lamps with 14 pipes going to the lamps. There are also 2 olive trees beside it, one on the right of the receptacle and the other on the left." When I asked the messenger who spoke with me, "What are these, sir?" he replied, "Don't you know what these are?" So I responded, "No, sir." Therefore he told me, "These signify the word of the Lord to Zerubbabel. Not by strength and not by power, but by my Spirit, says the Lord who rules over all. What are you, you great mountain? Because of Zerubbabel you will become a level plain, and he will bring forth the temple capstone with shoutings of grace, grace, because of this. Moreover, the word of the Lord came to me as follows. The hands of Zerubbabel have laid the foundations of the temple, and his hands will complete it. Then you will know that the Lord who rules over all has sent me to you. For who dares make light of small beginnings? These 7 eyes will joyfully look on the tin tablet in Zerubbabel's hand. These are the eyes of the Lord, which constantly range across the whole earth." Next I asked the messenger, "What are these 2 olive trees on the right hand and on the left of the menorah?" Before he could reply, I asked again, "What are these 2 extensions of the olive trees, which are emptying out the golden oil through the 2 golden pipes?" He replied, "Don't you know what these are?" And I said, "No, sir." So he said, "These are the 2 anointed ones who stand by the Lord of the whole earth." Then I turned to look, and there was a flying scroll. Someone asked me, "What do you see?" I replied, "I see a flying scroll 30 feet long and 15 feet wide." The speaker went on to say, "This is a curse traveling across the whole earth. For example, according to the curse, whoever steals will be removed from the community. Or on the other hand, according to the curse, whoever swears falsely will suffer the same fate. I will send it out, says the Lord who rules over all, and it will enter the house of the thief and of the person who swears falsely in my name. It will land in the middle of his house and destroy both timber and stones." After this, the angelic messenger who had been speaking to me went out and said, "Look, see what is leaving." I asked, "What is it?" And he replied, "It is a basket for measuring grain that is moving away from here." Moreover, he said, "This is their eye throughout all the earth." Then a round lead cover was raised up, revealing a woman sitting inside the basket. He then said, "This woman represents wickedness," and he pushed her down into the basket and placed the lead cover on top. Then I looked again and saw 2 women going forth with the wind in their wings. They had wings like those of a stork, and they lifted up the basket between the earth and the sky. I asked the messenger who was speaking to me, "Where are they taking the basket?" He replied, "To build a temple for her in the land of Babylonia. When it is finished, she will be placed there in her own residence." Pretty wild imagery. "Not by strength and not by power, but by my Spirit, says the Lord who rules over all." Yeah. The building of both the temple and the wall, I think, was pretty discouraging for the people of Israel, largely because before the wall was done, they were subject to marauding bands because there was no wall, and people could just come up in and pillage when they wanted. And also at this time, apparently, the work had stalled, and Zerubbabel needed encouragement to carry on the work. I also like the "Who dares to despise the day of little things?" Because, even our small faithful works are important to God. because he who is faithful in a small thing will also be faithful in a large thing. According to Spurgeon, God accepts your little works if they are done in faith in his dear Son. God will give success to your little works. God will educate you by your little works to do greater works, and your little works may call out others who shall do greater works by far than ever you shall be able to accomplish. So it's important to be faithful in whatever we've been assigned. Also, you have this scroll going out in this basket with a woman of wickedness inside of it, who a place is going to be built for in Babylon, Babylonia in this case. Seemingly saying that wickedness will be enshrined in Babylon, which kind of corresponds to the imagery, directly corresponds to the imagery that you see in Revelation, where you have the harlot riding on the back of the dragon, and you have that imagery of this woman of wickedness in having great power in Babylon. So, carrying on, Revelation chapter 14, verses 1 through 20. Then I looked, and there was the Lamb standing on Mount Zion, and with him were 144,000, who had his name and his Father's name written on their foreheads. I also heard a sound coming out of heaven, like the sound of many waters, and like the sound of loud thunder. Now the sound I heard was like that made by harpists playing their harps, and they were singing a new song before the throne and before the 4 living creatures and the elders. No one was able to learn the song except the 144,000 who had been redeemed from the earth. These are the ones who had not defiled themselves with women, for they are virgins. These are the ones who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. These were redeemed from humanity as firstfruits to God and to the Lamb, and no lie was found on their lips. They are blameless. Then I saw another angel flying directly overhead, and he had an eternal gospel to proclaim to those who live on the earth, to every nation, tribe, language, and people. He declared in a loud voice, "Fear God, and give him glory, because the hour of his judgment has arrived, and worship the one who made heaven and earth, the sea, and the springs of water." A second angel followed the first, declaring, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the great city. She made all the nations drink of the wine of her immoral passion." A third angel followed the first two, declaring in a loud voice, "If anyone worships the beast in his image, and takes the mark on his forehead or his hand, that person will also drink of the wine of God's anger that has been mixed undiluted in the cup of his wrath, and he will be tortured with fire and sulfur in front of the holy angels and in front of the Lamb. And the smoke from their torture will go up forever and ever, and those who worship the beast in his image will have no rest day or night, along with anyone who receives the mark of his name. This requires the steadfast endurance of the saints, those who obey God's commandments and hold to their faith in Jesus." Then I heard a voice from heaven say, "Write this, blessed are the dead, those who die in the Lord from this moment on." "Yes," says the Spirit, "so they can rest from their hard work, because their deeds will follow them." Then I looked, and a white cloud appeared, and seated on the cloud was one like a son of man. He had a golden crown on his head, and a sharp sickle in his hand. Then another angel came out of the temple, shouting in a loud voice to the one seated on the cloud, "Use your sickle and start to reap, because the time to reap has come, since the earth's harvest is ripe." So the one seated on the cloud swung his sickle over the earth, and the earth was reaped. Then another angel came out of the temple in heaven, and he too had a sharp sickle. Another angel, who was in charge of the fire, came from the altar and called in a loud voice to the angel who had the sharp sickle, "Use your sharp sickle and gather the clusters of grapes off the vine of the earth, because its grapes are now ripe." So the angel swung his sickle over the earth and gathered the grapes from the vineyard of the earth and tossed them into the great winepress of the wrath of God. Then the winepress was stomped outside the city, and blood poured out of the winepress up to the height of horses' bridles for a distance of almost 200 miles. Speaking of wild visions. In Revelation 14:7, you have, "Fear God and give him glory, because the hour of his judgment has arrived, and worship the one who made heaven and earth, the sea and the springs of water." One of the definitions, well, I think the main definition of worship is to give due honor. And it's important that we do give due honor to God, who created heaven and earth. And you have people, instead of worshiping God, worshiping this beast and his image, and reveling in this city, Babylon, with wine and immorality. And you have the due consequence for their actions, which is judgment here. So, pretty difficult passage to even kind of scope, because of the scope of the actions being put forward, like reaping the whole earth. What does that even look like? So, anyhow, carrying on. Psalm 142, verses 1 through 7. To the Lord I cry out, to the Lord I plead for mercy. I pour out my lament before him, I tell him about my troubles. Even when my strength leaves me, you watch my footsteps. In the path where I walk, they have hidden a trap for me. Look to the right and see. No one cares about me. I have nowhere to run. No one is concerned about my life. I cry out to you, O Lord. I say, you are my shelter, my security in the land of the living. Listen to my cry for help, for I am in serious trouble. Rescue me from those who chase me, for they are stronger than I am. Free me from prison, that I may give thanks to your name. Because of me, the godly will assemble, for you will vindicate me. Pretty awesome psalm of distress and crying out in times of that distress. Yeah. And good to mimic this pattern. I pour out my lament before him. I tell him about my troubles. Because God cares for us. And Proverbs 30, verses 21 through 23. Under 3 things the earth trembles, and under 4 things it cannot bear up. Under a servant who becomes king, under a fool who is stuffed with food, under an unloved woman who is married, and under a female servant who dispossesses her mistress. What you got here, Guzik? A servant who gains authority over others has neither the training nor disposition to rule well. A fool, when he is filled with food, when a fool is satisfied, it only rewards his folly and gives him the energy and the resources to be even more foolish. This, Egger tells us, is unbearable. So in effect, he's been rewarded for the foolishness that he's committed. An unloved woman when she is married. This is unbearable because the unloved woman should never be able to find a husband, and there seems to be a fundamental injustice when she does. It is also unbearable for her husband and her family to live with what the King James Version calls a hateful woman. Points to an odious, quarrelsome, unlovable woman whom society rejects, the opposite of a prudent wife. The implication may be that she is naturally unpleasant, or that she is merely old maidish and her success has gone to her head. Okay. A maidservant who succeeds her mistress, This case is similar to the previously described servant when he reigns. When the social order is upset and unworthy ones dominate the culture, it becomes unbearable. Oh, and he references Genesis 16:5 and 21:10, when Hagar upsets the household with, I think it's Abraham and Rebecca. So, okay, well, hope you have a great day. Thanks for joining me today. Bye.